What's up, Wisecrack? Welcome to The Good, the Bad, and the Brilliant, the show where we break down the video games, movies, and TV shows that we're really excited about. Now, we're going to do something a little bit different today and talk about a classic film. So we'll be getting into the 1994 Quentin Tarantino film, Pulp Fiction. This is the film that both put Quentin Tarantino on the map as sort of a household name in American filmmaking and established the style that would make him one of the most important filmmakers of the past 30 years.
Well, I'm a mushroom cloud-laying motherfucker. Every time my fingers touch brain, I'm Superfly TNT. I'm the Guns of the Navarone.
I'm Michael, and today I'm joined by Jared.
Hello, hello.
Now, before we get any further into this, we're going to spoil the crap out of this movie. So if you haven't seen it, please go watch it now, hit pause, come back. We'll be here waiting for you. And I promise you, and Jared can confirm this, it'll be worth it.
So worth it.
So now that you know that, hopefully you've seen it, we're going to get into it. Let's start by talking about the good. So Jared, what's good about Pulp Fiction?
There's a lot, but I think one word you can use to describe this film that I think gives a pretty holistic description of it is cool. This movie is cool as shit. And I think you can even almost go academically cool. Marshall McLuhan, although he was talking about a medium, once described cool as being involved and detached. And I think you can describe this movie as functioning on that level. A lot of this movie is people being in very high-stakes situations, but going about it with this kind of detached nonchalance. Whether it's Jules and Vincent going up and they're outmanned and outgunned.
We should have shotguns.
They're going up the elevator talking about foot massages.
Now, don't be telling me about foot massages. I'm the foot master.
Not knowing what's going to be behind that door, but yet they're talking about gossip, and yet they don't know if they're about to get killed. And there's just so much stuff like that. And then, of course, we got to talk about the dialogue.
If a pig had a better personality, he would cease to be a filthy animal. Is that true?
Well, we have to be talking about one charming motherfucking pig.
Tarantino really did change the game when it comes to dialogue, and there were so many films that tried to emulate him. And let's not forget that all these things add up to one of the greatest comebacks of all time, John Travolta.
Hell yes.
And all the performances are so good in this movie.
I think the two threads you bring up right there go together really nicely, because not only is the dialogue so exceptional, the performances meet the standard of that dialogue. They honor it with their commitment to those performances. And in watching it again, I couldn't help but think about how the dialogue hasn't aged a bit. It feels just as cool and fresh and sharp. And I went back and looked at the original 1994 review of this film that Gene Siskel had in the Chicago Tribune. And he had this line about the dialogue I loved where he said, "If you smile at David Mamet's dialogue, you'll laugh out loud at the words of Quentin Tarantino." And of course, Mamet, who has gone on to do some stuff in TV and film, is one of the most, I think, important stage writers of modern history, one of the best playwrights ever, and his dialogue is very fast-paced, it's very intense, it's kind of philosophical. So I love that comparison, and I like how he brings up laughter, because Tarantino writes in a style that is dense, it's serious, it's philosophical, it's emotive, but it's funny, and there's a levity to it. And I think the juxtapositions he sets up of, two hitmen showing up to a job, debating the nuances of cultural differences in consumer goods between Europe and the United States.
What do they call a Big Mac?
Big Mac's a Big Mac, but they call it Le Big Mac.
It is kind of like just a really great hangout movie with moments of extreme tension.
100%. I think often if we think about like a hitman type movie or a movie where we have some gifted criminal, we enjoy it, but we don't want to hang out with them. Like, I don't finish watching The Bourne Ultimatum and think I'd love to hit a diner with this guy afterwards. But you watch this and like you want to be in that car. I mean, not in the back seat with Travolta talking to you, but you want to be in the car, you want to be in the diner, you want to be hanging out with these characters. And to take a film with so much violence and still have it be a film where at various points you're like, damn, I want to be with those guys.
Yeah.
It's a pretty rare feat.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that's unique about a lot of Tarantino's work. Most people describe his most recent film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, as essentially a bromance, just a hangout. You mentioned how funny the movie is. There's one part that I want to point out that I think is particularly funny, and of course that's Christopher Walken's legendary monologue.
Oh my God.
Was captured, put in a Vietnamese prison camp. He knew that if the was stolen the watch, it'd be confiscated, taken away. The way your dad looked at it, this watch was your birthright. You'd be damned if any was going to put the greasy yellow hands on his boy's birthright. So he hid it In one place he knew he could hide something, his ass.
But not only is he funny because it's Christopher Walken and the story he's telling is funny, but I love how it's from a low angle, it's a very wide lens.
Yeah.
Not only does it give Christopher Walken this air of importance because the point of view that we are given is that of a little kid, so it makes sense that it would be from a low angle and that he would have this grandiose stature, but it just makes it all the more funny when that stature is undercut when he talks about how he hid a watch in his ass.
5 long years he wore this watch. Up his ass.
This is the film that made all of us ask, anytime we're passed down a family heirloom, like, how many asses has this been in? How long was it in those asses? Did anyone die because of the keystering of the object?
And how much more valuable and important does that make it? I mean, if I'm handed down a family heirloom that hasn't been in somebody's ass, I don't know how valuable it really is.
Oh boy. I also think another kind of in the background thing that happens in this film, and this is another thing Tarantino does well, the use of food. And in particular, things like making coffee important, discussions about burgers and milkshakes, the ideal breakfast.
Big plates of blueberry pancakes with maple syrup, eggs over easy, and 5 sausages.
There's so many scenes where like food is just in the background, we're hanging out, we're eating, we're talking about normal stuff. Of course, the scene where Samuel L. Jackson is interrogating someone he's about to kill about, you know, Kahuna Burger and all that.
You mind if I have some of your tasty beverage to wash this down?
I just like the way he brings the everyday into his films, because for most of us, those are the mundane conversations we have.
Yeah, so it's mundane, and you would think that a lot of that dialogue, which is very natural and easy to listen to and really fun, you are tempted to say that it's completely erroneous and that it's not there for any particular reason, but it really is, because every time it's either Bruce Willis's girlfriend talking about what she wants for breakfast, or the big Kahuna Burger speech, all of that is lulling you into this sense of calm before something erupts.
Well, I love how that everything you just described is encapsulated in the short prologue scene, where we have our sort of modern day Bonnie and Clyde of the convenience store and restaurant game, sitting there having a coffee, talking, and slowly as you're watching this for the first time, you realize what they're up to. And we go from a relaxing diner scene to someone about to start a robbery.
Oh yeah.
And that whole emotional arc we get right in that first scene, and all of those beats are explored, heightened, extended throughout the film, but he introduces us to that right off the bat. And of course, and maybe this is veering into brilliant territory, but the way in which he ties the threads together in this film, I find it so satisfying. And even when you've seen the film multiple times, all of that coming together in the final diner scene is so great. And the way, especially when we first, the scene where they show up at Marcellus's club.
His bar.
His bar, yeah. And they're in the sort of like gym shirts and shorts and why you dress like that. We don't want to talk about it. It's so great that it's not until like an hour and a half later that we go back and experience everything that leads us up to that point.
Because in the back of your mind, like, how are these stone cold gangsters looking so goofy?
Yeah. Anything else that comes to your mind, sort of short of the brilliant mark, that stands out to you as being good about this film?
I will say that the Jackrabbit Slim dance sequence gets me every time. It gives me chills. I think that in particular, that scene, as well as a lot of other scenes, has brilliant use of Steadicam.
Yeah.
So even when we're introduced to Jackrabbit Slim, the setting, we're following Vincent. He's a little bit high.
Yeah.
That's also something that I appreciate about Quentin Tarantino movies, is like when the characters are on drugs, you can sense that they're on drugs.
You definitely can. And I mean, to even kind of tie back to what you brought up initially, that scene is one of the coolest scenes.
Yes.
And normally you don't think of a twist off as cool.
Yeah.
It sounds like some corny Happy Day shit.
Yeah.
That's not going to be sexy or interesting. But God, that scene is cool. It holds up. And like Travolta dances in such an effortless way where you watch that and you're kind of like, I could do that, but you can't.
No,
it looks simple, but you couldn't do it.
If I may bring back to McLuhan, both involved and detached, because he's like, I guess I'll dance, and then he goes up there and kills it.
I mean, I guess that's the benefit of having a little bit of heroin before you dance.
Yeah, and being known as the guy from Saturday Night Fever.
Yeah, just kidding. Don't do heroin before you dance, or ever. I think we could probably go on talking about good things for 90 to 300 minutes.
That's right.
But we have to do something that might be hard. We have to at least attempt to discuss what might be bad about Pulp Fiction.
All right,
are you ready to do it?
I'm as ready as I'll ever be.
Okay, so we will now try to see what we think might be bad or kind of bad or not so good about Pulp Fiction.
So I thought about this a lot, and it's a bit hard to do because it really is a masterpiece with a capital M. But I think that as we continue to do the show, we're going to run into this quite a lot, especially if we focus on classics, and that is when a property is a victim of its own success and then rewatching it later makes it feel a little bit awkward or lose some of its specialness. So for example, we already talked about how legendary the dialogue is in this movie and how it really influenced screenwriters for decades after that, and how everyone was trying to imitate Tarantino. Everyone was trying to have that dialogue that's really clever, but not too clever, because then you get, sorry, I hate this movie, an Igby goes down situation, where it's just so clever that you can almost feel the screenwriter patting himself on the back as he writes.
Vegetarian?
Well, what does that mean?
Well, you don't roll like big Rasta spliff joints, do you? Your joints are like salad joints, not like a big, sloppy, bleeding cheeseburger that you rip into kind of a joint.
I feel like the dialogue in Pulp Fiction has become so iconic, that it's become so memed, that it's almost lost the thing that made it so exceptional, which was how organic and natural it is. For example, the producer of this segment told me that he had actually seen clips on YouTube of Samuel L. Jackson doing the Ezekiel thing.
Ezekiel 25:17. The path of the righteous man is beset on all sides by the iniquities of the selfish and the tyranny of evil men.
Or of Travolta talking about Jackrabbit Slims. He had seen those clips on YouTube before even seeing the movie.
Wow, what a disappointment.
What a disappointment. But things like that, I guess, just make it age strangely, because if you watch it for the first time in 25 years, you're not really taken back about how clever this is or how natural it is, but you're just kind of like, oh yeah, so that's where that's from.
Yeah.
And not that that makes it bad, but it does kind of siphon some of the uniqueness out of it that only happens with movies that are just so successful.
One thing, it's kind of minor, that's not my favorite is Quentin Tarantino, the actor.
Yeah.
It's not horrible, but he plays a character named Jimmy in the film who makes great coffee and is where you want to go if you got a blood-filled car with a body in it and you got to get taken care of before his wife gets back. It's fine, but I don't think it adds anything to the film to have him in it. And I think that he, to some extent, must be aware of this because he's been in his films less and less.
Yeah.
He wasn't in Django Unchained a bit, but wasn't in Inglourious Bastards. Definitely was not in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And I think to have the creator of the film in the film is a little too much at times. And rewatching it, he's fine, but maybe that's a great place to put another one of the wonderful character actors he has in his arsenal.
Yeah, I agree. He had some big shoes to fill just because he's sitting there next to Samuel L. Jackson, Harvey Keitel, Bruce Willis.
Yeah.
This dream team of actors all working in their prime, and then there's him who's doing a fine job.
Mm-hmm. Now this one is going to out me for maybe just being kind of a coward or too squeamish. Not the biggest fan of some of the drug stuff in the movie. Heroin gives me the heebie-jeebies. It truly does. I think because we've scraped the barrel pretty intensely, we can maybe move on and we could save some of this time to get in some of our other categories where I think we'll have more to say. So,
I agree.
Are you comfortable closing the chapter on bad?
Let's close it.
Okay, fantastic. So we've now talked about the good, we've talked about the bad. Before we get to the brilliant, got to have a little fun. So we are going to do our lightning round. Okay, you prepared?
I'm prepared.
Fantastic. As you might know, this is where we get to basically attack each other with some questions that might be personal, might be about the movie. You have to answer quickly. We'll move on from there. So you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, cool. So, what Tom Hanks role would you rather see Quentin Tarantino in?
I mean, I have to say Mr. Rogers because that's his most recent one, but seeing Tarantino as Mr. Rogers would just be so funny.
That would be the creepiest shit ever, seeing Quentin Tarantino as a childhood hero.
In a red sweater. That would be the best.
Okay, I like that.
That should be an SNL skit, by the way.
Which haircut in the movie would you most like to have? I think it's a film with, I can think of at least 3, if not 4, iconic haircuts or hairstyles.
I've never tried the gelled or kind of greased look that Travolta has, but I would try it.
Vincent, I'm on the intercom.
So we know that Tarantino is famous for incorporating nods to different genres inside of his films. What's a genre or even a filmmaker that Tarantino's never sort of copied or made an homage to that you'd like to see him use?
Oh, man. That is a great question. I know Tarantino is a big supporter of Asian cinema. He had his own distribution line for a while, releasing some Wong Kar-wai movies. I think he released The Chungking Express under his name. I would like to see him do more homages to, I mean, I know he did a lot in Kill Bill, but probably more contemporary Hong Kong cinema. So I know he loves Wong Kar-wai. It would be weird to see him do kind of Wong Kar-wai romantic slow-mo style, but I think he can maybe borrow something from him, maybe having Christopher Doyle type really bright colored cinematography, which he's never had before.
That's awesome.
I think that would be pretty cool.
That was fun. So it's your turn now.
All right. If Quentin Tarantino had to play any character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, who would he play?
Oh, I love it. I gotta go. I have two in my mind right now, but I'm not gonna cheat. I'm only gonna say one. I'm gonna go Doctor Strange.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
This one is actually a fan theory that is very popular on the internet, and I don't know if you've heard it before, but I want to get your thoughts on it. Do you believe that what is in the briefcase is in fact Marcellus Wallace's soul? And here is the indications of that. One, well, the suggestion is that he sold his soul and then Vince and Jules are trying to get it back. So one, the briefcase code is 666. There's a Band-Aid on the back of his neck, which apparently there's an urban legend that Tarantino got drunk one night and told some guy that the Band-Aid was supposed to be, that's where his soul was siphoned out.
Yeah.
There's also Marcellus's bar is bathed in red light, so one might suggest that that's demonic, devil. And then when they kill Brad, right before they cut away to the first story in its entirety, there are flashes of a similar color orange that's in the briefcase, suggesting that that's the color that a soul makes. So, is it Marcellus Wallace's soul in the briefcase? Is it just an orange light bulb? Or is it just a MacGuffin? What do you think?
I'm going to say I love this theory. It's a fun theory, and it adds up. However, we're in MacGuffin territory.
We're in MacGuffin territory. I completely agree.
We have that MacGuffin so that we're talking about stuff like this right now. And this is an instance where I'm pro MacGuffin.
Yeah.
There's other instances in other films where maybe like I'm chasing a bunch of stones around the galaxy where I'm not as into MacGuffins.
Yeah.
This is fun. This is a fun one.
Yeah. For those of you that don't know, a MacGuffin is an arbitrary plot device, usually an object that somebody has to chase just to move the plot forward.
Yeah. I would say the most... Yeah.
Were you going to bring up Rise of Skywalker?
Oh, go for that. That's a great one.
The whatever those pyramid things that they have to
Sith
find.
Wayfinder.
Sith Wayfinders.
Yeah, which made a lot of sense, JJ. That was good. A great film there, bud. Okay, so now that we've covered the good, the bad, and done our lightning round, it's time to get to the meaty stuff.
Okay.
Let's talk about the brilliant. And Jared, I imagine you have quite a few thoughts here, so
I
get
do.
us going. What's brilliant about Pulp Fiction?
Well, first I want to start off before we get into the thematic stuff. I want to talk about the technical stuff, and I want to specifically talk about two things. One, I want to talk about how that element of cool, of being involved and detached, is actually functioning on a technical level. So I want to bring our attention back to that scene where it's the beginning of the movie and Jules and Vince are going up to get the briefcase back. They open up their trunk, they're outmanned, outgunned, say they should have brought shotguns, and then they're walking up and we see this Steadicam shot that's following them, and it's this breezy, brisk conversation about foot massages and stuff like that, when they should be worried about, oh my god, we're gonna die. But there's one moment in particular that I think is really brilliant from a formal level. So they reach the door, and you would normally expect that there would be a lot of tension building because they don't know what's behind the door. And so, but they decide that they're not going to go in quite yet. So they walk away from the door and continue their conversation about foot massages, but the camera stays with the door. The camera stays with the tension as the characters go away from the tension. So we can say that the camera is, in a sense, involved, whereas the characters are detached. It's the same way where we see that kind of action-y shot when they open that trunk. Usually when people are getting ready to raid a house or raid an apartment and you see that opening shot from the interior of a trunk, you're expecting something epic, an epic shootout, and it's given us the exact opposite. And I think that there are so many technical moments like that that really give that feeling of cool that isn't just in the dialogue, that isn't just in the performances, because Tarantino's also a master of moving the camera.
Yeah, and I think that's really making me think that's where Tarantino distinguishes himself. Like you said, like he doesn't just write cool dialogue, he doesn't just cast cool characters, he even makes the technical aspects communicate that sort of coolness. So that's awesome. Let's do another one. What else do you think is so brilliant about Pulp Fiction?
So another thing I want to talk about that makes this film so unique and so funny and just makes it work so well is this cavalier, tongue-in-cheek attitude that it has towards two things that I think make it very funny, and that is violence, or kind of the seediness of the gangster underworld, and time. So I'm going to read a list of things that in which this violence or seediness is undercut, and then I'm going to go on to time.
Oh, I'm excited. Thank you for doing the real research here.
Yeah, no problem. All right. So violence. So when Jules and Vince are in the apartment, Jules whips out his gun and kills Brad's friend on the couch midway through Brad's sentence and then says,
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
which could almost be a statement that's directed at the audience. The next one, this one is about the seediness of the drug underworld. Vince is buying drugs from a drug dealer, and there's this low-angle shot, which usually suggests danger. And a drug buying scenario conventionally is seedy and dangerous, but the actual content of the frame and the dialogue is so far from dangerous.
He's such a nice drug dealer.
He is a nice drug dealer. Yeah, he kind of got the Jared look going a little bit.
I didn't want to say it, but yes, it's like if you were selling drugs out of your Hollywood home.
Yeah. So another one is when Marcellus wakes up after getting run over, he shoots Butch, but the shot hits a good Samaritan trying to help Butch, and there's no remorse. She doesn't even get her own shot. It's just...
She just falls out of frame and like
falls
screams.
out of frame and
Yeah.
screams. This one's one of my favorites. When Zed and Maynard get the Gimp, we see Maynard take the Gimp out of a small box chained closed, but the shot is entirely in the background, out of focus. Whereas most movies would dramatize how messed up this is just nonchalantly occurring in the background and is given no real special dramatization.
And thank God. That's already the part of the movie that I have the hardest time watching. Like, put that in the background, out of focus. It's so brutal.
Yeah. So now I'm going to move on to time and the way that there's, in most action movies or gangster movies, there's always this ticking clock element, and Tarantino loves to play with this, especially with the wolf. So they're in a terrible rush to get this body cleaned up and to get the car cleaned up, but the wolf is always calm, collected, and verbose. He's not into the whole brevity thing with his words.
If I was informed correctly, the clock is ticking. Is that right, Jimmy?
100%.
Your wife, Bonnie, comes home at 9:30 in the a.m. Is that correct?
Uh-huh.
I was led to believe if she comes home and finds us here, she wouldn't appreciate none too much.
You wanted that.
All right, that gives us 40 minutes to get the out of Dodge. Which, if you do what I say, when I say it, should be plenty. Now, you got a corpse in a car, minus a head in a garage. Take me to it.
There's also a great contrast when Vince is driving an OD'd Mia to the drug dealer's house. We have this high-stakes car chase with a stoner eating cereal with this warm lighting as he takes his sweet time to get to the phone. And then the last one is I love how we have this ticking clock to help Mia get her adrenaline shot so she will stay alive, and this bickering between the spouses is just drawing out the tension in a way that you would not normally expect. Usually it would be that they're being chased by the cops, or the ticking clock is that Marcellus is about to come and they have only minutes before he comes, but this is just that these two drug dealer spouses cannot get their together.
Well, it's the way that someone would be mad if you like showed up at your buddy's house late at night and his partner didn't want you around. Like, it's taking these everyday domestic reactions or situations and then mixing them with the most insane, high-stakes, life or death things.
Yeah.
And I think in a normal film, someone's going to react with an over-the-top horror or anxiety or intensity. And here they're just kind of like bickering like someone's sloppy friend came over. Not that there's a woman who might die in your house if you don't stab her with the adrenaline at the right angle.
Yeah, and I can't help but think that maybe Tarantino winks at the audience about his manipulation of time and the whole ticking clock trope when the whole watch thing is introduced as Butch's MacGuffin, basically.
Because the watch is just up the ass. It's a covered timepiece that's traveled through country to country.
It certainly is.
I'm glad we got to bring that up again.
Yes.
I felt earlier we didn't talk enough about the ass watch.
It is legendary.
Yeah. Oh, and this video is sponsored by Ass Timex. I found myself thinking this on a rewatch. Like, by the end, John Travolta's already dead. We know that he dies later, but you almost forget about that as you see him in the diner walking out. We know that's happening, but the way Tarantino messes with time just makes it so much more fun. And you would think in a way that it could sort of deflate the stakes by so quickly killing one of the main characters, but you don't really feel that.
Yeah.
It still feels just as engaging with just as high of stakes in that final scene at the diner.
Yeah, and plus, more to your point about Vincent dying, you would imagine that the main character or the top billed performer in your movie, when he dies, it would be this dramatic thing, but he really is just killed, humiliated.
Oh, he was just happening to take a shit and walks out, and Bruce Willis just has the best luck ever.
Should have brought his Uzi with him.
Yeah, and I think the luck thing gets to one of the things I find brilliant about it, right? Because that scene, like so many other scenes in this film, involves some sort of chance or fate or luck, or for Samuel L. Jackson's character, a miracle.
Yeah.
And the film plays with this idea of, is there meaning to the things that happen to us, and or what meaning can we project onto the things that happen to us? And so many things in this film are just sort of random dominoes falling into one another, and then the effects of these things happening and the consequences of those things. And I think it really brings up a question of, is there purposiveness to our reality, to our lives? Or is everything just contingent and random? Is God or some cosmic force driving things? Or are we just a bunch of dumb animals trying our best to not die today?
And I think Samuel L. Jackson's epiphany at the end of the movie is really what makes that scene with him and Jules at the cafe be an appropriate end for the movie. Because up until this point, we've seen so many random occurrences. Honey Bunny and her husband rob a restaurant where there's supposed to be no heroes, but of course there's Jules. The drug dealer just so happens to run out of balloons and to put the heroin in, allowing for Mia to find the bag and OD. Vincent is in the bathroom when Mia finds heroin and ODs. Butch just so happens to pull up right in front of Marcellus walking across the street. They just so happen to walk into the one store run by rapists.
Oh, God.
And this series of events is so absurd that it ends with the most powerful man in Los Angeles being assaulted by a mall cop. Vince, of course, accidentally shoots Marvin in the face. Butch just so happens to show up in his apartment when Vince is in the bathroom. The final one that brings this whole discussion of chance not only in the subtext of the movie but into the actual text of the movie is Jules and Vince being shot at and not actually getting hit, causing Jules to have his great religious epiphany. And so the way that I've always read this is that the first thing that we see in the movie is the definition of pulp. And so I'm going to read the definition. 1. A soft, moist, shapeless mass of matter. 2. A magazine or book containing lurid subject matter and being characteristically printed on rough, unfinished paper. So I really like how the movie engages with both of these definitions. The second one is obvious because we are being shown stories that have lurid subject matters. But it's the first one that I find to be really interesting because it seems like the end with Jules asking whether there are such a thing as miracles, if things happen for a purpose. Yeah. It's that if there is a world with a God, can anything be shapeless and formless and random? And, you know, Jules says no, Vincent says yes. My question to you is, do you think that the movie is oriented towards one of those answers?
It's kind of in the middle, right? I think there's a world in which the miracle wasn't a miracle, but Jules can still read it as such. Jules can choose to look at reality and interpret it in a way that provides him with meaning. And it makes me think of, there's this, we have this in the history of philosophy, but there's this idea of occurrences or events that happen that sort of reorient someone's subjectivity. The most famous person who's been doing that for the past 10 years is this French guy, Alain Badiou. And he has this whole theory of events, which for him means any truth that happens is motivated by an event, by an occurrence. To think back to the Bible, which is quoted in this movie, there's the, Saul on the road to Damascus gets shot down or blinded by God and becomes Paul the Apostle. But it's only this event that leads to that change, and it depends on how he interprets the event. So it seems like in this case, this miraculous event happens. Jules then reorients his own subjectivity around a certain interpretation of the thing that happens.
Right. Well, do you think that there's any relevance to the fact that Vincent does die? We don't know what happens to Jules.
Yeah.
But Vincent, who doesn't believe in miracles, is killed by the random chance that he leaves his gun out for the small time it takes him to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is significant, that his attitude towards things ends up kind of, I guess it's not his attitude that leads to his death, but if it's true that nothing means anything in his mind and everything is random, well, how else should he have died? He died in a meaningless way.
I guess so.
I don't know, but it is interesting, and you're right, and this gets back to the issue of time, right? How interesting that we hear Vincent say all these things when we already know that he got shot down on the shitter. Mm-hmm. We know this is already coming, and yet he's the one that has this sort of nothing means anything approach anyways. But I don't know, for me that's one of the things that just sticks out to me about this film, that idea. And I don't think Tarantino gives us an answer, but he brings up a really interesting set of questions about our relationship to chance and the miraculous.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a movie that I think has a lot of the core themes and elements that we've seen extended, explored, and heightened in the rest of Tarantino's films. But of course, even in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, what do we have other than a few random things happen and the Manson murders don't happen? Exploring that same idea of the way in which a couple dominoes falling differently can rewrite this historical event, but not for some big purpose, just because some random guy decided to pick up some random girl and go to this ranch and all this stuff that unfolds from it. So I think it's interesting how we've seen Tarantino continue to explore that theme.
And at the end of the day, what's so beautiful is that all these things that we've been talking about, what works so well, doesn't only work on a narrative level, but also works on a formal level. It's just an amazing piece of craft.
Okay, we are almost to the end of our journey. We've talked about the good, the bad, the brilliant. We've done our lightning round. The only thing left to do is for us to rate this film. Now, what we have to do first is pick our system of rating. We're going to go on a 5-point scale, but we have to pick an object from the movie that will be our demarcation of scale.
Okay.
So, I mean, we do like samurai swords.
Gimp masks.
Gimp mask, oh boy. $5 milkshake.
Oh, let's do that. Because that's like iconic and we haven't even mentioned it yet.
That's a shake. That's milk and ice cream.
Last I heard.
That's $5.
We're gonna rank Pulp Fiction on a scale of 1 to 5, $5 milkshakes. 1 being worst milkshake you've ever had, 5 being wow, this is incredible, give me more. 1 to 5, Pulp Fiction. Jared, what are you giving it?
It's just milk and ice cream and it's $5 and I'm giving it 5 all day,
Woo!
baby.
That's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I already said it's a masterpiece with the capital M, so
Yeah.
of course I'm going to be giving it a 5.
Yeah, this might be our first 5 of the series. I'm gonna say 5 out of 5.
Wow.
These things are personal, and I'm gonna up the stakes too. $5 milkshakes.
Hell yeah.
I think it really is. I think we can say it's a classic. Is that controversial?
No, I don't think it's controversial at all. I mean, it may even be Tarantino's best film still, but I'm not even willing to commit to that. I'm just throwing it out there. I would have to watch all of his movies in a row again to really be confident in that statement.
So Jared, thank you so much.
Thank
It's
you.
been so much fun. Well, this has been the good, the bad, and the brilliant. Thank you so much for watching and sticking around. And please let us know what you think in the comments. And especially let us know if there's properties that you would love to see us cover in this format. As always, thanks for watching. Later.
Peace, guys.